Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Tonight, we're calling an audible on what the original topic was. I was going to kind of discuss a couple topics, but we're going to discuss a new topic and then the original topic, and we're going to forego one of the other topics. And that topic is we're going to discuss Andrew Claven using John MacArthur's death to support his son's work and ultimately his son's sin, which is something that's very unbecoming of John MacArthur to have done while alive. But it also clearly looks like a situation where Andrew Klavan is completely misrepresenting John MacArthur's words in order to make a broader point about what conservatives need to be doing, and that conservatives need to recognize and promote sin. So we're going to discuss that topic first. That topic is blown up today. We'll get into some more of the details about that. And then I want to talk about the Pines Sap situation where this guy went on the Jubilee Surrounded podcast and ultimately got canceled from his job for it. And we're going to talk about that situation as well. So, a couple interesting topics tonight. Maybe we'll dive into some other things as well. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about Charlie Kirk on the Tucker Carlson podcast, which I thought everyone should watch that. That was insanely good for Charlie Kirk, who we've largely been critical of, especially on matters of faith and social issues. But the guy is really good on economic populism, and he's a very good voice on that issue. And it's like, Charlie, why don't you speak to that more? So, a lot of stuff to get into tonight. How are you doing?
Doing good. Like the rollout of the lineup. And obviously, yeah, the Charlie Kirk interview was good. Like I watched that, made sure I watched it, and was rather impressed with Kirk. It wasn't just cliche talking points, but he actually had a concern for his audience that is often missing from like a lot of pundits. So the fact is he came across as someone that actually cares.
Yeah, so that one I think is hard because a lot of people are in a different generation than their audiences go, so they just don't know the issues. But Charlie Kirk did, he's a millennial, so maybe he's not all about that. But yeah,
He's
I
able to
we're
bridge the gap.
yes, yes. So let's dive into the first topic, which is Andrew Klavan using John MacArthur's death to kind of advance his son's agenda. So this was sort of pre-announced, like that he was going to do this, because when John MacArthur died, Andrew Klavan, teased that he would tell a story about uh, John MacArthur and his son. So Andrew Klavan teased that this was going to happen, and then when it did happen, our friend, our contributor at Defiant Baptist, he clipped it and showcased it on the internet. And because he clipped it and showcased it on the internet, it is blown up. AF Post, or is it AF Post or AF News or whatever? They uh, blew this story up as well. You're seeing a lot of people react to the story. Joel Webbins reacted to the story. Michael Foster has, come down on Andrew Claven's words here. And the more context is added, I think the worse it gets. That's my initial impression of the story. Because,
Yeah, I
oh, you
mean the
clipped him
story is more about
deceptively. It's like, not really, because when you expand the context, it's worse.
well, the story is more about how he's trying to frame it, I think.
Yeah. Like, I don't think John MacArthur did anything uh, really notable here.
Like even in the clip, John MacArthur's mention is rather limited, so it's really pretty much how he framed it.
How he's framing it, and you got to understand, maybe it's called like, I'm trying to think of what to call this, because if you're familiar with the concept of a feedback sandwich, where you say something is good and then you give some bad criticism and then you say something is good again, and I'm trying to like work that into how, because Andrew Klavan will start off saying homosexuality is good and then say, the part about John MacArthur and then go back to saying how homosexuality is good. So there's sort of a sandwich format. And because of that sandwich format, it's very clear to me that he was using MacArthur as sort of a way to, get people to lower their guards to his uh sodomy sandwich. That's what we should call it, not a feedback sandwich. So that
And
is
sodomy sandwich is kosher.
it is extremely kosher. And so without further ado, I think we can dive into this. Because I don't brevity is our value proposition here at Evangelical Dark Web. We just get right in on the topic. So this is the video from AF Post that our friend Defiant Baptist. This is a broader context than what he showed, but yeah, this is what he made go viral.
I'll just be honest with you. I feel that nature produces a certain number of gay people, and I basically agree, maybe about 5%. And I basically agree with Marine Le Pen, the French conservative who said homosexuals are like salt in soup. If there aren't enough, it's a bit bland. When there's too much, it's inedible. And she was convicted of hate speech for saying that, but it's obviously the truth. It's the way nature, the world is built. It gives you a little bit of gays in your soup, and it makes it taste better. And I basically believe that people should be left alone, and you should concentrate on your own sins.
All right, so AF Post obviously did some sort of potato recording of this. But anyway, his appeal to Marine Le Pen is just pathetic. I never liked her. How many elections in France can she lose before people move on from her? She's terrible.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing that could happen for the right wing in France is her to be arrested and jailed and, like, off the ballot permanently.
Like, France is so left wing that she's basically, she might still be to the left of a California Democrat. I don't see how she is remotely right wing. But anyway, he's appealing to her, and he says he's basically saying the ideal percentage of the gay population is 5% of the country.
Yeah, and it's salt, which again, you know what Christ called the church? Salt. You know, this idea if the salt loses its saltiness, it's worthless. It's, its flavor, its preservation, its salvation, even because, again, it preserves your life, or in the sense that it preserves your food supply. So yes,
right.
Like the fact that you're calling it salt is just almost mocking the scriptures.
And I think that is purposeful. Maybe not on Andrew Claven's part, or Marine Le Pen's part, but definitely Satan's part. I think it's a more satanic thing. It's just, it's a Freudian slip, so to speak.
Like, what do we need gays for? What, like spreading diseases, keeping the healthcare industry afloat? Because again, the reason Fauci was able to rise to power was because he basically took a group of people that were so degenerate and so essentially used to being in the system because of all their diseases, and then he basically just exploited that and created a racketeering operation. Like that's the salt he's talking about, is like, children getting AIDS because a homosexual donated blood to, like, the Red Cross. Like,
yeah, and children got that and stuff. So, and I don't know if you've seen the Captain Planet cartoon clips, and it's like, wow, this is the most left-wing propaganda spoon-fed cartoon I've ever seen. Where it's openly anti-natalist to, an audience of white children.
Yeah, anti-natal, anti-marriage. It's trying to do the AIDS speech.
Yeah, the AIDS speech thing. It's like, you're not going to say how people got AIDS, are you? But anyway, we're going to let the guy who kind of looks as unhealthy as an AIDS patient himself speak.
If indeed that is a sin. But most of you know my brilliant son Spencer is gay. A lot of people think that that's why I changed my opinions. I've never changed my opinion on this. I've been working with gay people all my life. And I trust Spencer, and I trust other gay people to talk to God, do what God thinks is right in their life. And if they don't talk to God, then, that's on them. I can't do anything about that, or unless they ask me, and then I'll tell them what I think. So it makes people angry. But John is obviously very strongly opposed and thought you should confront homosexuals about their homosexuality. So here's my story. COVID hit. And my doctor said to me, and I've had my doctor for decades, and he knows me very well. He said, you're a prime target to get killed by this thing because of your age and because you have a bad lung, which I have a collapsed lung because I got pneumonia, wouldn't stop exercising, so my lung is a little broken. So I was more cautious than I felt younger people needed to be. And I'm a writer and I don't mind being alone, so I was staying home for a little bit longer. But when California Governor Newsom, from his headquarters in the French Laundry restaurant where he was dining with no mask with friends, decreed that churches should be shut down, MacArthur, I think, he was not the only one, but he was certainly the largest church that stood up to Gavin Newsom. And
let's just point out that most of the Daily Wire was absolutely useless in 2020, and he's basically defending how he was useless in this because, I have a collapsed lung, therefore I believe the narrative. Because John MacArthur didn't stand up on this issue for like 4.5 months.
If I recall correctly, Andrew Klavan's whole mantra that year was "Save the Claven" or something like that.
Saving the Claven.
It was something like that. Got to do all this to protect me. So it was very self-centered, one might say. Right. Even if in jest, but so was the God King. That was also a joke, but
So he only opposed the lockdowns because it was clickbait about these. Imagine if the roles were reversed, or we're pointing out hypocrisy. But as I write in Winning Not Winsome, pointing out hypocrisy is not the same as winning.
I mean,
pointing out hypocrisy gets you clicks. It does not get you wins.
I mean, within the Daily Wire, I guess within their ecosystem, he might have been middle of the road on lockdowns, but
who was not middle of the road?
I mean,
he was actually anti-lockdowns.
If we're assuming, I think Knowles would certainly have been to the right, and obviously Shapiro probably would have been more extreme. So he might have been in that middle of the road. Even boring might have been better than average. Yeah, I mean, until it was,
Anyway, this part of the video is like the irrelevant story that he tells to kind of, fluff his own ego here.
He kept his church open. He barred the health inspectors, wouldn't let them come in. He fought off petty attacks like giving parking tickets to his parishioners, which they did, and he defied them in spite of being threatened with all kinds of fines and jail. And I had him on my show while he was fighting. I had him with his lawyer, who was my friend Jenna Ellis, and he won that fight. And I just loved him. I talked to him. We had a great discussion.
If I recall, Jenna Ellis was he went to the Thomas More Society, who then went to her to be the face of the case. She was not that was her lawyer. I mean, she wrote that, even though the reason why John MacArthur won that case was because the Supreme Court ruled on a favorable case months earlier. And then they got lucky that the state of California just folded for some odd reason, because they didn't fold on the next church. Which I believe was Chino Hills, Jack Hibbs's church. I could be wrong about what church it was, but it was some sort of Calvary.
Yeah, I mean, Chino Hills, yeah.
Or San Jose or something like that. I don't know if you had anything to add.
I mean, but yeah, that one was also because of the county level, so there's that dynamic. Because I know MacArthur's talked about how he was very ingratiated with the LA in the community, so that also helped his standing.
So anyway,
and he radiated faith. I admired the joy that came out of him with his faith, and I knew after I talked to him that even though my lung is bad, even though I was worried about COVID, I had to go to his church to support him, which my wife wasn't happy about, because she feels if I'm going to die, she wants to be the one to kill me. So I go to his church one Sunday.
Very anti-marriage, anti-natalist boomer humor. Just pointing that out.
I mean, can we also just point out that he views you can create your own ending, kind of Bible interpretation, because he's just you can work it out with God. The whole historical interpretation doesn't matter, which is weird coming from someone that's Anglican, so he's more high church than
Anglo-Catholic. So he even would more rely on I'm Catholic but without the Pope, which Anglo-Catholic is neither historic nor Anglican nor Catholic. So anyway, but I did want to say one of the reasons why Shrek 3 is a terrible movie is because the humor is anti-natalist. It treats having children as a burden and stuff like that, and that movie bombed for a good reason. Anyway, that was some boomer slop humor that he just tried to drop there, and it should be called out because I'm tired of the whole, marriage sucks joke, or having kids sucks. This type of humor has been very detrimental for society, and you just saw him kind of do it there. Except when got to bring up how brilliant my son is.
Sunday with Jenna, and the place is packed. It's absolutely packed. I mean, there's overflow, people out in tents and all this stuff. And people recognize me. And so they're shaking my hand and they're kissing me on the cheek. And, and it's the height of COVID fear. And my doctors told me I'm going to die like that if I get it. And he's an expert, by the way, on these kinds of epidemics. And so I thought, well, everyone has to die sometime. I'm supporting John MacArthur in keeping this open. So someone, it may have been Jenna, but it may have just been one of MacArthur's people, came up to me and said John wanted to meet me. And so we went up to his office. And after a while, he comes out of his inner office and he comes over to me, shakes my hand, looks me in the eye, and gives me a meaningful look in the eye and says, I just want to tell you how much I like and admire Spencer's work at the Daily Wire. Spencer was writing stuff at the Daily Wire. And I knew exactly what he was telling me. He was telling.
So keep in mind, this is Andrew Claven framing John MacArthur's alleged words to him. This is how he's framing it.
Me that he too believes, as I believe, that no man falls out of the sphere of God's love. And the first thing we're supposed to do is express that love in imitation of God. And I know the left has decreed that any disagreement with their horrible agenda is hate speech, but I think now the right, these hitchhikers on MAGA, these limpids who are sticking themselves to MAGA, are coming out with this stuff as well, against gay people as well. I mean, there are plenty of important gay people in Trump's administration. He has been really good about this. He has always supported gay people. He's a New Yorker. Like me, he's a New Yorker. You live with all the crazies. You live with all the different things, all the eccentrics, and they actually give flavor to life. And if they give flavor to life, you have to think, well, maybe this is the way it's supposed to be. Maybe this is the...
All right, that's the end of the clip.
Again, the whole flavor to life thing, it's just so ridiculous. I mean, yeah, what? Because they make music, which probably sucks. They make for the most part. And they're in Hollywood. Okay, Hollywood is notoriously degenerate.
And it's not
especially right now. Like how rap music, because that's a notoriously gay industry. That's the whole Diddy thing.
Yeah, Boondocks tried to warn you about how gay it was.
I think it's like 50 Cent is like the only straight rapper.
Is Ice Cube straight?
I mean, he wrote, Vaseline.
Yeah. I mean, so maybe he's an expert in something. Or at least Eazy-E, died of AIDS, according to the movie. So let's first start about John MacArthur's knowledge. I think this is a pretty important point that a lot of people might miss. John MacArthur, there's a high likelihood that he did not know Spencer Klaven was gay. I did some research on when this would have been widely known. Meaning I consulted the oracles of the artificial intelligence community. And it does seem like, okay, September 2020 to sometime in 2021 was when a lot of people would have found that out. Now, John MacArthur, not very online. He was not a social media kind of guy. He just wasn't. He had a Twitter account that, occasionally posted things, but it was not like the most active account out there. Phil Johnson was active on the Twitter sphere. John MacArthur, not so much. So very high likelihood that John MacArthur would not have known that Spencer Klaven was actually a homosexual.
I mean, again, I think I only learned that in 2021.
Yeah, again, you're more online than,
and that's some of that. And I speak as someone that probably watched him a lot more in 2020 than obviously after that. So again, you didn't really.
Andrew Klavan.
Again, you pick up on the fact that he's very theologically liberal, especially on creation and the first 11 chapters of Genesis. You pick up on that stuff occasionally. Obviously, he doesn't bring up Spencer Klaven in a lot of his content, except when he does. So.
And maybe that's more of a recent development because I hear recently it's like every episode he kind of does it.
And I wrote the article on that in 2021. So again, him advising a gay person to come out of the closet because he did that. And again, he thinks like gay people are a good thing and like a benefit to society. I would say that they're a blight.
Yeah, not even the Romans really thought that. The Greeks might have been a little bit different, but
I mean, the Romans might have thought, okay, pitching versus catching, but at the same time, if you were a actor in Rome or a hypocrite, literally, you were not allowed to be a citizen. So,
now
and
didn't
those career choices were notorious for certain proclivities,
and
which
didn't
history hasn't changed.
Augustine
Yes,
didn't even
Augustine.
like
Yes, that's where I learned that from.
he
City of
was
God.
very
And
anti theater kid.
yes, Saint Augustine hated theater kids.
So, and that means you should too. That means Luther, Aquinas hated theater kids, and then John Calvin hated theater kids by by the straight
Yeah, but
line of
that's the
theological
flavor. That's the
tradition.
flavor of life.
Theater kids. So, yeah. So John MacArthur, high likelihood he did not know Spencer Klavan was gay, but Andrew Klavan's going to take an affirmation of his son's work, which I'm gonna assume John MacArthur didn't know because I think it's most likely the case, and twist that into an affirmation of not only he believes as I believe, and what does he believe was like theologically asinine. It was that no one escapes the sphere of God's love. Again, we can get into the debate about whether God loves every single person. Like, I don't think God loves Judas because Judas was literally created as the vessel to betray the Christ, and Jesus says of him, it would be better for him to have never been born. I don't view that as being loved. Or that his behavior is outside the sphere, or that he was outside the sphere of God's love. Like, we got to understand that in the whole created order, God's attributes, part of the purpose of creation is to manifest the attributes of God, for the glory of God. And in that, all the attributes of God's mercy and the attributes of God's justice and wrath are all displayed in creation. So, that's why, Romans 9 talks about vessels of mercy, vessels of grace, vessels of wrath, vessels of, justice and stuff like that, and the potter and the clay and stuff like that. So, I I don't know. I don't think, the people who are in hell are necessarily loved by God, but I don't think that's not an imputation. I'm not maligning God's character when I say that. I just think that's true. And that's not a slight against God's character for that to be true because God has no obligation.
I mean, again, it does come down to what we talked about last week, where it's just like, yeah, you shouldn't be, endorsing the character of a gay person. You really shouldn't have friends with gay people because that's just going to lead to you compromising to accept them, even if you're putting barriers up as far as how much you'll accept them. But even just the mere association is itself a compromise.
Right. And Vault Dweller's right. Judas rejected God's love. Yes. And it is functionally available to all, because the gospel is going through the four corners of the earth. It is pretty available these days. But not everyone wants it. And, it's a free will thing, but again, it's also God's providence.
Because again, he's making it seem like, oh yeah, how you're handling your son's queerness is like completely in line with what the Bible says, even though it's only led to him being like basically being an ally.
Right. And he is the same as Chip and Joanna Gaines. He's promoting gay propaganda. That's what Andrew Klavan has done. And that's why, the people defending him are rather egregious because they're doing the same thing. And at least Andrew Klavan is at least more or less being honest about promoting gay propaganda. But that's not necessarily true about the people who fall into that. So when he talks about but then he talks about talking to God. You just got to talk to God and do what he says. So, again, salvation is very, it's very mystical. It is how God works. You just talk to God and do what he says. And odds
I would
are,
say
how many of these
touchy-feely,
people,
not even
yeah,
mystical. It's touchy-feely. Because again, he's essentially insinuating that God could give two different answers to two different people.
got a super chat from Von Go Hard, Bright Off Go Hard. Checking in from Steak and Shake, and they have the tallow fries.
Yes,
So
the tallow.
enjoy, enjoy. So yeah, I think you bring up a good point. And then afterwards, so he has a very touchy-feely view of how God works and basically how salvation works. It's not about what Christ did, it's about whether you talk to God or not. And, even Satan talks to God at times, as is seen in the book of Job. It doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of the grand scheme of salvation.
No, at
But
the end of the day,
no one does come to the Father except through Christ.
Well, at the end of the day, with regards to Satan, I mean, he's bound by God. He is essentially, within restrictions. If God
Right.
summons him, he has to come. He is compelled.
Right. The strong man is bound. And then Andrew Taven then transitions from this story about John MacArthur to then make a broader point about how gays need to be accepted on the right. So, how did he start off? This is the sodomy sandwich that Andrew Claven worked out. He started off saying we need a number of gays, 5% of gays in society is ideal. And then he tells a story about John MacArthur, a very long-winded story that included a lot of details no one cared about. And then he gets back to the end where he says we need more gays on the right. So it's a sodomy sandwich here. And ultimately he's using John MacArthur as cover for promoting this.
Yes. I mean, he's essentially trying to justify homosexuals in the conservative movement and using John MacArthur after his death to justify it.
Yeah, using his approval of Spencer Klaven's work, which, again, very dubious that he even knew that Spencer Klaven was gay in 2020. So there's literally nothing here. There's not enough evidence, because again, we're gonna give the benefit of the doubt to John MacArthur over Andrew Klaven, because it doesn't even sound believable that John MacArthur would do that. And Spencer Klaven or Andrew Klaven has since reaffirmed that, because Andrew Klaven's going to come out and say, I'm not really saying what I just said there. That he didn't give the sodomy sandwich. So let's kind of dive into some of the reactions of this. So let me pull up the bookmarks. So yeah, our friend Defiant Baptist made this go insanely viral all in one day. So, and then bigger accounts have boosted it as well, boosted the story and video as well. So Andrew Claven says, yes, except that I'm not saying that at all. You're completely right, except for for being totally wrong. So maybe let's read Defiant Baptist post first. This is completely insane and infuriating. Andrew Claven is claiming, based on a private conversation with John MacArthur, that John MacArthur secretly agreed with him about homosexuality and how it should be confronted. Don't miss the accusation being made here. Claven is saying that the decades of MacArthur's faithfulness on this issue did not represent what he really thought of gay people, and Andrew bases this off of one sentence from a conversation about which we have zero context. And to make matters worse, Claven shares this after MacArthur has died, so there isn't anyone that can dispute this ridiculous narrative. You might be thinking that the clip ends very abruptly. That's because Claven immediately pivots to voices in MAGA, i.e. Christian nationalist, that are against the inclusion of so-called gay conservatives in the movement. The fact that he transitions to grinding this axe casts even more doubt on his secret meeting with Pastor John. In conclusion, there's absolutely zero reason to believe Andrew's framing of the story. John's views of homosexuality were biblically orthodox for his entire ministry. We won't throw that away based on the questionable story from a false brother. So I don't agree. Like I can be. I think we were a little bit more precise in what exactly this was, because I do think it was a sodomy sandwich where he's ultimately saying that John MacArthur approved of Spencer Klaven and his contribution to the conservative movement.
Knowing that he was
yes,
gay, like,
knowing
and again,
that he was.
I think he downplays he actually downplays the whole how much he supports sodomy in the first like 2 minutes of the clip is basically how we need like the spice of life.
Right.
Like we need them for the arts and the music.
But
That's just like which is ironically like the black church needing the gay choir director, like that kind of a trope.
right. So it's like, what exactly did they agree on? Because that's Andrew Claven's interpretation of the event, which again, I don't think is very believable. And it doesn't jive with me.
And again, his response is this very wishy-washy sophistry. Oh, you're right, except that you're entirely wrong.
Yeah, it's like
it's not even a refutation; it's just a word game.
He does acknowledge that MacArthur and him were far apart on this, but he also seems to think he also uses MacArthur's appreciation for his work to then say that we weren't really that far apart on this. That's kind of the point. He starts off saying, "Oh, John MacArthur was very publicly like this, but in private he felt like this. He felt much different." So he's trying to introduce Andrew Claven as a hypocrisy in John MacArthur's ministry. And I don't think, first of all, his framing even sounds credible. So I don't think his framing is very credible. I think his framing is a house of cards as it is, let alone, I just don't buy it.
I mean, his framing comes across as a Trojan horse.
Right. Because he has an axe to grind, and Defiant Baptist is 100% right about that. The reason why he transitions from his axe to grind into John MacArthur to his axe to grind is because there is a thread line going through this. He had an agenda in using John MacArthur and connecting that to his son. There was a reason for that. And I'm not going to pretend that there wasn't.
Yeah, I'm going to give Ben Shapiro the benefit of the doubt that he was not that subversive in his comments on MacArthur's passing.
Yeah. Ben Shapiro was rather classy about it.
Yeah.
As much disagreement as we're going into. Joel Berry coming to defend Andrew Claven, saying not at all what he said, you liar. No, that was fair. That characterization that Defiant Baptist made was fair.
And I believe Joel Berry also defended Spencer Claven in the aforementioned issue last week.
Right. Again, one of the people that made fun of the Chip and Joanna Gaines, but will defend Spencer Claven. That to me is rank hypocrisy, and it should be called out. So Joel Berry on the wrong side. If you're on the opposite side of Joel Berry on an issue, you're probably doing something right. Because he is a liberal and he's not honest about it. And then Megan Basham, I think, she defends Andrew Claven here. She says, I 100% disagree with what Andrew said here, but I don't think he was suggesting that MacArthur was secretly thought homosexuality was okay. I think he was just saying that MacArthur was being kind to his son despite his very strong convictions and teachings about homosexuality. And that's not an accurate characterization of what Claven was doing.
That might be a proper read on what that interaction with MacArthur was. Again, that's also her assuming that he knew who he exactly about his bedroom situation. But yeah,
I'm not even sure about that.
Well, she is certainly presuming that.
But okay, you're giving her the benefit of the doubt on the her assumption of what her understanding of the John MacArthur conversation. Okay, it's within the realm of fair.
I'm saying that she's assuming that John MacArthur knew that he was gay.
Well, yeah, that's
an assumption.
That is an assumption. And then, but Andrew Claven was suggesting that John MacArthur was a lot more okay. Actually, let's frame it this way. Based on that private conversation and Andrew Claven's framing of that private conversation, does Andrew Claven think that homosexuals are on their way to hell?
Yeah, I mean, he seems to think that they're necessary. And he actually is saying that his son's work is good because it's gay. because it's that salt, that extra flavor. He's actually saying that. And again, that's why he's framing it as, oh, we need these people in our life. We need these people in our movement because, again, I won't say he's using standpoint epistemology, but he's basically saying Spencer Klaven's good because he's gay. Even though last week he was saying, well, him being gay has nothing to do with this article that I'm promoting, even though it's the only reason he even has a platform is because of his last name and because, of what he does in the bedroom. Like, those are the only two reasons he has a platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think Andrew Claven was suggesting that that John MacArthur was less dogmatic about the eternal state of gay people from this because he said he believes as I do. So that statement by Andrew Claven, then the subsequent nonsense about the sphere of God's love and talking to God being all you need to do to earn salvation. Because he did posit, even with his touchy-feelies, that was a works-based salvation that he proffered. Ultimately, he was saying that John MacArthur was a hypocrite behind closed doors. There's no other way to take it, because if Andrew Klavan was correct in his framing, then yeah, John MacArthur was a little bit hypocritical. But I don't have any reason to think that he's correct. He doesn't sound very credible, and his story doesn't make sense for a number of reasons.
His beliefs are very extreme and very basically progressive on this particular issue.
And Megan Basham defended Spencer Klavan last week, and we talked about that on the live stream. You should watch it. And I think it's hypocritical. I think it's hypocritical to go after Chip and Joanna Gaines for promoting gay propaganda, but not also Andrew and Spencer Klavan for promoting gay propaganda.
I mean, yeah, she's been awful for a while. And yeah, she did something on race and like she's trying to attribute black crime and fatherlessness and she's blaming the state of the black community on the Great Society on the Great Society making things worse and making the fatherlessness a thing. But no, the Great Society only accelerated a problem that actually existed and then spilled over that to the other races. It's the problem of black fatherlessness predates the civil rights movement. It was a problem in the 60s.
Right.
But she ignores that. Why is that the case prior to that?
And according to the FBI stuff, documents, civil rights movement was pretty gay. Apparently, yeah.
And rapey.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe MLK was also homosexual. So I'll read Defiant Baptist's response. He too believes, as I believe. What does Claven believe about homosexuality? Yeah, that again begs the question: what exactly is their common belief here? Because as far as I can tell, John MacArthur's theology was quite far away from Andrew Klavan, and other than right-wing talking points, I'm not sure they really had much common ground. So, those are my reads on that situation. I don't know if you have anything else to say about the Andrew Klavan nonsense that's going on.
I mean, again, it's just subversive. It's why, again, the entire shift back to the right in the conservative movement was started because someone asked the question, how does anal sex win the culture war? And we're seeing a rehashing of that in 2025, even though they lost. But you still have these remnants in the movement that are kind of in these dying wings. Because let's be honest, Klaven's on the tail end of his life. Obviously, Dave Rubin, I don't even understand who his audience is.
Does anybody?
I mean,
I don't get the Dave Rubin nonsense. I don't see. I don't see how Dave Rubin has.
Maybe he has more of a libertarian audience, which
or maybe he's fallen
libertarianism off. Leads to right wing. So there is a legitimate pipeline there.
Do you think Elon Musk is going to go down that pipeline?
I mean, he's at some point speed ran it, but I do know that he did have the conversation with Curtis Yarvin, and all the signs that we have suggest that conversation did not go well for Elon Musk. because they were talking about the America Party, and I think Yarvin slapped him some reality in very long-winded, esoteric fashion.
Yeah, whatever happened to the America Party?
And I don't think Elon Musk was ready for that truth.
Yeah. I think if Elon Musk were an American citizen, he might have gotten through the pipeline. But because he's not an American, I think that makes that very difficult.
I don't know. I think he has, to some extent, he does have more money than sense. And he thinks he could just buy it or, screw it into doing what he wants. But
yeah,
that's
I wish
not
I could.
I wish, like that's not how politics works. It's not that simple.
Right. And yeah, I think
can't
Tesla's
just-
a dystopian company.
You just can't wave a giant check, which is your biggest asset, and buy the elections the way you think you can.
Yeah, because he's not that liked, especially since the left was using him. The left was saying that, oh, Trump is Elon Musk's puppet. And then clearly that wasn't the case because they had a falling out. But he's also alienated a lot of people on the right. So, yeah, he's not that well liked. But Tesla is a sign of conformity, so maybe there's something there. All right, with that said, we can move on to our next topic.
Let me respond to this real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, when what was it? Didymus says civil rights movement and state welfare did in fact destroy the cultural foundation of American blacks that are nowhere near as dysfunctional beforehand. Again, I think you could argue that the 60s was probably more of an inflection point, and obviously they, the blacks community as a whole took a wrong turn, and the Great Society was more or less an accelerator on that. But I do think the problems were bad then, because I think the out of wedlock birth was closer to 50%. Now it's like 75. So
I mean,
again, if it's a coin flip, that's pretty bad.
I think statistically it wasn't a coin flip back then, but
no, for the population, but not the black community in particular was closer to a coin flip.
Oh, really?
Yes, like their statistics were bad then, but we want to blame the Great Society. I think that's overstated. I think the Great Society was just gasoline on a fire.
Interesting. I mean, I think the civil rights movement ethos being injected into the black community was ultimately just as detrimental, because that included liberation theology and ultimately made them very left wing.
I mean, yeah, but liberation theology does predate it to probably the 30s.
Right. So, yeah, it's a lot of bad things happened at once, and then a people group was wrecked. But, a lot of boomers got to feel very good about themselves, which is actually one of the points that Tucker Carlson made in his thing. Let's move on to the next story that I want to talk about, which was a guy named Pines Sap getting fired from his appearance on the Jubilee episode, where he basically identified as a fascist to kind of take the power away from the word. It's transgressive and stuff like that. And
now, do we actually know if he was fired or he just claiming that?
He is claiming that, and Elijah Schaefer set up a fundraiser for him. So I do think it is. I think the whole story is genuine because there's no reason not to. So let's play this clip. It's from Rift TV, where he does an interview. I'll start.
I frankly don't care being called a Nazi at all.
I didn't say that. I didn't actually say that. I said, are you a fan of the Nazis?
Well, they persecuted the church a little bit. I'm not a fan of that. But
what about the persecution of the Jews?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't support anyone's human dignity being assaulted. I'm a Catholic.
But you don't condemn Nazi persecution of the Jews?
I think that there was a little bit of persecution and stuff like that, which is bad. We may have to rename this show
because you're a little bit more than a far-right Republican.
Hey, what can I say?
I think you can say I'm a fascist.
Yeah, I am.
Smiling now. When I saw that, man.
So I guess that was one of the clips. That's one of the clips that went viral because, again, when you just stop caring about what they call you, they have no argument. And ultimately, that's where the guy was getting at. Now, this episode got a lot of criticism on the right for, where do they find these people? Because you had the one dude that looks super Mexican. and like the mustache and everything. Like, dude looked like he should be in a sombrero, playing in a mariachi band, and he was on that panel. So it's like, where do they find these people? I do wonder, but I wonder if like I'm like big enough to get on there, or you know,
I think you actually have to apply. You actually go on their website, you apply.
Oh,
Then
I could probably get accepted, but I don't think I'll want to.
I don't know. It's a format. It's very much slop entertainment, and that's kind of what the whole thing
But
is.
it has been good for people's brands.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen a lot of people.
Case in point with Pines Sap, like
I think
it has been good for his brand.
Early things are Pearl Davis. That was kind of like her rise was through Jubilee.
Even that atheist that owned Jordan Peterson, he is he's still riding that. Like he has that in his Twitter bio. And that guy's again midwit Reddit tier and all that, but he had one good moment. From an objective, he definitely owned the guy, and he's ridden that to gain more followers. So it's kind of interesting. I'll let the clip play out because they have more of their story to tell. But
I was confused. I was like, I think that guy's, is he trying to get fired? Because I know today that almost every job, every sector has been inundated with this DEI bullshit. And they allow you to believe anything you want except for things that are stringently right-wing, Christian, or heterosexual, you know, orthodoxy. Absolutely. And you are in some serious trouble in your personal life over this. Am I right?
That is correct.
What happened?
Well, unfortunately, I lost my job as a result, and no one really is to blame for that. It's just the culture that kind of exists currently surrounding the manner in which you're canceled for voicing exactly what you said, any heterosexual, Christian sort of moral belief that goes beyond sort of the secularism and the relativism that we're so used to in our time. And so that's what I set out to do with Mehdi. He asked me, oh, well, do you condemn the Holocaust? It's like, well, of course I condemn persecution of anyone, Jews included. I'm a Catholic. I don't believe in persecuting anyone. But I'm not going to play your game of let's reference the Holocaust because that's a loaded question. What you're trying to do there is you're trying to insinuate that worldview is going to lead to genocide, chaos, and destruction. But as you said, we see so many regimes where that's exactly the opposite. I mean, look at what's going on in El Salvador.
Now he's arguing that El Salvador is, what the 1930s various countries wanted to be, which, again, these countries were actually wildly successful before the war. Italy being actually one of the greater examples. So it's very interesting to bring that up when you reject globalism, when you reject liberalism, good things happen to a country. And that's kind of the point that he's bringing up.
I mean, the problem is he kind of just goes, HH, and I don't mean that in Hulk Hogan, HH. I mean something else, HH. And then he gets, like, essentially he puts himself in the box of, like, saying, yeah, I'm a fascist. It's just like, again, he kind of was being, kind of a little bit of a tard.
Okay, so
even if he's our tard, he still was acting like
hey, well, again, this is actually what I wanted to discuss, like, because I think there is wisdom to impart on this situation. It's not, it was, I work for myself, so you actually can't cancel me because, large companies are contracted to do business with me. So, But anyway, with that said, I wasn't always uncancelable. There, I used to work for a small company, and that I'm using air quotes on small company because they're small in the world of government contracting. They're not actually a small company. So you could say I was a Fed back then, but it is very possible that I could have gotten fired for being, if HR ever found out about the fact that I disapprove of H-1B visas working in an industry that's entirely dominated by H-1B visas, for instance. And nevertheless, I never was afraid of getting fired. There was always a trust in God, and there was always a, I'm going to say what I believe, regardless of the consequences. Now, there is a balance here. First of all, he wasn't necessarily using his own name in doing this. Like, his Twitter handle's not his own name. He goes by Pines Sap, which is what we'll call him here, Pines Sap the TradCath. So, but he did use his own face, and that's what bit him, is he used his own face. He wasn't a VTuber, if you're familiar with what that is.
I'm really not. I've
It's
seen the term, but I haven't.
those YouTubers that use a virtual avatar of themselves.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's kind of cringe, but yes. He's not like that. So I don't know. So those are my opening thoughts. Like, there's a balance that all of us have to work through, and he showed his face on camera and was right wing, and that cost him his job. So obviously, there's a lot to unpack here. Was he being retarded? First question.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was. I mean,
just what was step one? Where did it go wrong? What was it, being on the podcast in the first place?
I mean, yeah, you could argue that, because Jubilee is very much slop, and of course, they're probably not picking the brightest bulbs to go on the show, at least on certain issues. And obviously, I think that conversation was supposed to be about immigration and what is America or whatever, because he was trying to he would object to someone saying that white people are Native Americans because, oh, the Indians were here first. Well, they didn't have a country. There was only 10 million across the entire continental U.S. So it was sparsely populated.
Yeah,
and
I'm reading the Anti-Christian Nationalist book, and she calls pre-Columbian civilization highly developed, and I'm just like, ugh, man, because it completely being so inaccurate completely undermines her entire argument. But I'll get to that. We might do a live stream on that.
Noble savage is a peak, Enlightenment idea. And no, they were just regular savages.
Yeah, just average.
With some that were above average.
So I guess the question is about spurging out, really, because a lot of that came off as spurgy. And we gotta be smart about it. But I do think that the response to this was excellent. So he had a GoFundMe raised in his favor that raised money a lot more than what he
anticipated.
Yeah, what they
even how much more than he probably made at his job.
Let me actually pull it up, because I don't know what he did. He does not tell people. Like, it's at least smart to not tell people. I guess his name is Connor, and he says, I was recently shown, and then unfortunately I subsequently lost my job raising an emergency fund. And he tells people that, hey, do not talk to anyone else. You can verify this is through the Feels Guide 2003 or at the Rift TV, which is Elijah Schaefer's latest project. But they've raised nearly $40,000. So $39,000 they have raised on what was initially, I believe, only $7,000 or something, or maybe it was initially $15,000. I don't know if they raised the goal or not. But you know what? I actually support this campaign, because even though this guy was canceled for Wrongthink, the fact that the people coalesced around him is a W. Because when we do this, when we show corporations, hey, if you fire our guys, they are going to raise money, and it's not even going to be that bad. We're taking the punishment away,
Yes. Like it's great having Thomas Cord back. It's great that JD Vance stood up for Big Balls, who ironically said you couldn't pay me to marry a brown woman or something like that, which makes it even funnier that JD Vance, of all people.
I mean, he doesn't want Big Balls doesn't want to become the next Bill Burr. All right, so. Yeah, we just took away the sting of the cancel culture by these rallying cry GoFundMe campaigns. Like, this is doing it. This is crushing it. And actually, sorry, Give, Send, Go, to be clear. This is on Give, Send, Go, which I think has very much successfully supplanted GoFundMe because of its free speech adherence. They've actually become like the reliable crowdfunding campaign source. But it's just amazing that we're at the point now where we can rally. We have enough funds to rally around our own troops, and corporate America is eventually going to see enough of these, after the Shiloh Hendricks and then now this guy and maybe someone else was in between, that there is no incentive to firing people other than the fact that you don't like them. But I want them to get to the point where they have to tolerate us. And, they promote us anyway because we're just that much better at the job than, the other people. So this is a huge development that maybe this is happening more than once. And, $39,000, that's a very nice emergency fund. Dave Ramsey would more than approve of having $39,000 stored up for a rainy day. So very excellent. This is how we do it. This is how we win. We stay together. We don't, again, can we criticize going on the Surrounded podcast or whatever? Can we criticize showing your face while working in corporate America and stuff like that? Yes. But at the end of the day, the whole no enemies to the right or no enemies on the right conversation is about we're not selling him out to the woke mob. And that's what we need to do. We need to actually hold the line, shield wall, and you don't just sacrifice someone you don't like. You don't we're going to pull the troops back so that Uriah can get killed. We don't do that. That's not what we're doing here. So, I'll pull up Didymus. But leftist virtue signals never reveal reasons to send their costly signals. I think the benefit is emboldening others. Statistics man, are corporations trying to punish right-wingers? I think their motivation is purely to protect themselves. I think it's a punishment because the vibe has shifted. So that's why I think it's a punishment. I think it's it's that. Let's see.
Yeah, at the end of the day, they only fire these people because they want to.
Yeah, they don't have to. Cancel culture only ever went after the weakest link. And sadly, the weakest link for many was they would bow and apologize to the cancel mob themselves and not even make it get escalated to their employer. Because oftentimes, if you bow to the cancel mob, they own you. So, and maybe it's both, because that's what Stephen Martyr is saying in the chat. Maybe it's both. I think that's all I wanted to say about that topic. You got anything else to add?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think there is a need to elevate ourselves because, again, I mean, there's another clip that's going around of like Myron Gaines and Hitler is becoming brown coded, as some people might describe it, and it's becoming almost low class. And ironically, not even like white people that are praising Hitler. It's the Kanye West of the world. Obviously, the Groypers are increasingly, let's just say, diverse in some of their background. The Andrew Tate crowd, again, Andrew Tate's a internet globalist.
He's a third worlder.
And so is his audience. So we do need to make sure we do elevate it, how we approach the issues, how we even take public stance. I'm all for being edgelord on the internet, but we do need to be versatile in our tactics. We can't just be edgelord 100% of the time. We do have to be serious. We do have to be able to be legitimized.
Now, I will say Nick Fuentes trying to make that point was absolutely retarded. No, man, you were the last person to make that point.
He is the point.
I mean,
he's the object lesson.
Yeah, so he's the last person to say, don't spurg out on a podcast and say things like that make us look bad. Literally the last person to make that point.
And again, I think at one point Fuentes actually tried to legitimize himself, but that's just never going to happen. I mean, he's the guy that's burned 109 bridges and is complaining about being left all alone.
is that a reference to a certain group of people getting kicked out of 109 countries?
No, not at all. It's just a coincidence.
Coincidence. Got it.
And again, it was all their fault.
So, in conclusion, stay smart. Stay smart out there. Don't spurg, and use discernment and stuff like that. Let me know if you think I should go on the Jubilee podcast, because again, I think this channel has enough of an audience that they'd accept me, and the podcast and the Twitter following and all that. They've definitely accepted lesser. So, yeah, let me know. Let's wrap it up talking about the Charlie Kirk appearance. So I thought the most fascinating clip, and I'm not going to play any clips, was probably the part where Charlie Kirk's like, I'm not hating on the boomers, but every decision that they made benefited them at the expense of younger generations. Basically talking about how we have a geriocracy. And I might write an article about how, honor thy father and mother does not mean create a geriatric economy and stuff like that. So I might do something like that in the future. And then Tucker Carlson, so Charlie Kirk's like, I'm not trying to hate on the boomers. And then Tucker Carlson's like, I am. So I just thought that scene was funny. And then when they talked about so I don't know if you had a response to that.
Yeah, I mean, it is true that, like, again, the boomers get a lot of, like, negative credit, or they get a lot of the bad press for the whole revolutions of the 1960s, which wasn't necessarily them leading it, other than that, obviously a lot of the hippies, they were. But, they're not responsible for the Hart-Celler Act or the Civil Rights Act and all the bad legislation. That's the people before them. So they get a lot of bad flack for the stuff that they didn't actually do, but prior generations did. But a lot of the economic stuff is on them, because that's again, Reagan is kind of the poster child of this Ayn Randian economics mixed with big government spending, and that's pretty much what and selling out your future to pay for today. That's very much 1980s when all the boomers were of age.
Guns and butter. So, yeah.
And ironically,
that's good to have the perspective on what the boomer generation actually did, and a lot of the problems started before.
Yes, a lot of the economic stuff solidified in the 80s. Endless debt cycle, 80s. Spending on consistent deficit spending. That's all 80s. Again, Reagan had the chance to push back the Great Society, didn't, solidified it. So again, all the revolutions of the 60s were essentially confirmed in the 80s. But because Reagan's this charismatic, very calming, soothing voice, we kind of overlook a lot of just the bad policies that he did, and how he did not set up America for the future. Again, that's on the boomers.
Yeah, and then the idolization of him on the right, when probably Richard Nixon might be a better character in terms of competence and social critique. I mean, yeah, Richard Nixon was, if you read his commentary on society, is like, his commentary in the 1960s is like, wow, this is exactly what we've dealt with wokeness. Maybe the civil rights movement was actually wokeness 1.0.
Well, I mean, literally, it's the same. Like, yes, the civil rights movement was Black Lives Matter. Their rhetoric was the same. Again, it was literally a cycle. Like, you go from the 60s, and then you have it repeat in the 90s with Rodney King and with O.J. Simpson. And then it repeats again in the 2015. I guess if you want to go a little further earlier, that you can say repeats with
Michael
Trayvon.
Brown.
Yeah. Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
Then you have Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, and then you have obviously 2020.
St. George Floyd.
So in what is literally a decade that reminiscent of the 60s.
Yeah.
So again, we literally just are on 30-year cycles.
Not even 80-year cycles. So I thought that was interesting. And then he talked about the pink economy. It's kind of interesting because, running a small business is like every job is, for the most part, useful. It is, useful on paper. If there were fewer people, the work would still get done, but it would be very burdensome, I guess, is my observation. So, I don't have the capacity for these pink jobs. But anyway, that's not always the case, because I used to work in a field where it's like, okay, we have a lot of people on staff, and some days some of these people are not working at all. So, or, some people just have very little to do.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it's kind of
that's
weird.
always the issue with staffing is capacity. Do they have the proper workload? But I mean, when he's talking about the pink economy, just for those that don't understand, he is talking about this very feminized economy where, everything's all HR friendly, which again, a lot of those HR positions are themselves the pink economy. But how those people are making more money than like, the electricians, the HVAC workers, and like, the people that actually do the physical labor that keeps the lights on and keeps everything working, and you flip the switch and the thing actually works, how they're making less than essentially the HR people,
Oh, yeah.
despite the fact that one group of people is actually producing something and the other are literally what they call a cost center,
Yeah,
meaning they
in my company, it's somewhat the opposite, where the people that are actually doing the work are the ones that make a good amount of money. Like they crush it on the paychecks. So, yeah, it's
which again, all of that ties back into immigration because the electrician, the construction worker, a lot of those people are having their wages depressed by foreign labor. So
yeah.
again, it's all feedback loop. And that's again goes back to the boomers being guilty for, taking cheap labor and cheap Chinese crap over supporting their own country.
Yeah, I think it's a very good way to put it. So, and that podcast, I think, also set off a conversation about uh, I guess the state of the country is Protestant, and Protestant in its founding, and a bunch of Catholics are trying to like argue against that. It's like, no, America was founded as a Protestant nation. Even the colony of Maryland did not stay Catholic very long. Like
No,
Catholics,
I think it's by 1650 it was majority Protestant.
yeah, and then obviously, or not obviously, but by the you know 1776, like this country's like over 95% Protestant. Like it's not even debatable. Okay, there's a pocket of Catholics in Maryland. Okay, and then
Yeah, at the beginning.
everything else. Well, I mean, there's still a pocket, but yeah, everything everywhere else. The South doesn't even know what a Catholic is. In many areas in the South, they don't even know what a Catholic is. But again, and then the areas and counties that have majority Catholics are like super blue. Just pointing that out. So. I had someone tell me that the Catholics were the original subversive group, but I don't think that's entirely fair. But I do think that a lot of Catholic immigration is somewhat of the basis for white liberalism. I do think that is more fair because the Irish were kind of liberal in politics. So, anyway, those are some of my thoughts. But yeah, America, founded as a Protestant country. And, I did get a question about. I'm going to answer that question when it comes in Restream. But anyway, I'll do a last call for questions, and then let me know what else is going on. But yeah, it's been a quick news week for a fast news week, but I just don't have as much time to write articles as I'd like. But I did a lot of articles last night, so it all came in. So I got a comment by Joshua Michaels. I can't pull it up because I can't see it, but I saw it live, but I didn't see it on the thing. Sometimes the Evangelical Dark Web calls it a small business. Sometimes he calls it a ministry. I'm actually like, this is a ministry that's an Evangelical Dark Web is a ministry that is set up as an LLC. But when I talk about small business, most of my experience is talking about what I do during the day. So, yes. Hope that clears up the confusion.
Again, I don't think media companies should be operating as non-profits, like, to be very clear. And yeah, that's calling out a lot of people and a lot of names, but I don't think a media company should be operating as a nonprofit.
Yeah, especially since we're actually more useful not doing that, because you can actually say things that nonprofits can't really say because they're restricted. Now, some of those restrictions were lifted, but yeah. Hope that clears up any confusion. And I think that's all we got for today. All righty. Have a blessed day. Stay based. Christ is King, and we